I received my Purple Heart with 3 other men. We all lived, and one of those men was Sergeant Carlton Clark. A mission came down the pipeline, and it was going right back to where I got my Purple Heart. And I was like, no, I'm not going. No. I was like, you guys promised me I would never have to go back. No. They looked at me and they're like, hey, Chris, we need you. My boss comes over and he goes, hey, Warrens, you're bumped. There's a new team taking it. I was like, okay. And Sergeant Carlton Clark comes over and he's like, Warrens, is that 50 cal up? And I'm like, yeah, motherfucker, you know what's up. That was the last time I ever saw Clark. They hit a monstrous IED that night. The truck turned on top of itself. KIA, 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 blackout, 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 get back to your command post. And I knew, I felt it. I was like, oh no.
This is Sparta!
Welcome to another episode of Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and oh, are we in for a treat today. We got our guest, Chris Warrens. And after completing 2 tours in Iraq with the Army, he went on to become a serial entrepreneur, an icon in the fitness industry, a leader in real estate, an influencer in high-end timepiece trading space. So for those that don't know high-end timepiece, that's watches, like these guys. Also, CEO of Warrior Consulting, founder of the Clark Initiative, and recipient of a Purple Heart. Please join me in welcoming Chris Warrens. Chris, my man.
Intro.
Long intro, but well-deserved as well.
You know, it's funny, man. Like sometimes I hear the intros and I kind of like it gives me like tight skin. You know, I get that like immediate gratitude feeling, and it's almost a little uncomfortable to sit through it, but I've gotten comfortable and you nailed it, man. So thank you for that fantastic intro. And fundamentally, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to give back, hopefully help someone, and give my perspective on a few things.
Oh, we're going to help some people today. So first of all, thank you for your service. Always respectful of those that have served. And obviously someone that's survived 2 tours in Iraq, much like many of my friends, a distinction that I don't have, like we talked about, but very respectful of you and your service to our country.
Yeah, dude. You know, it's at this point in my career, it's a chapter in the book, figuratively and literally. And it was actually one of the coolest things that ever happened to me. You know, basically almost being killed on numerous occasions. Just one day, much worse than others. Like that day when I received my Purple Heart, I actually thought I was gonna die. I was like, shit, I'm done. I'm cooked. That's it. It's over. I actually gave up, and it was because of shock, because there was just so much shock going through me. But the point is, it was an amazing thing that I've learned over time to appreciate as amazing, because it's changed my perspective on life and how I look at life and many things that are a part of life. By no means has it perfected me. However, it's given me the ability to have gratitude, the same reason why my skin started tightening when you were introducing me. And it's allowed me to be able to educate others to find gratitude and change their perspective as well. In this case, definitely on leadership. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Well, my man, so let's get real deep real quick. Do you feel like you're living on borrowed time and have that cognizance each day since that moment to really just live your life to the max and try and instill as much impact as possible?
Yeah, dude, that's a great question. I think it's a 2-part question, no and yes. And the reason why I say that is I didn't have that sense of urgency for probably the first 5 years or so after getting out of the military. My perspective changed. It definitely changed. However, I got out of the military in 2008. I actually watched the economy collapse on my second tour. I was in Baghdad. We only had one TV with cable for
Wow.
150 grunts. We watched Katrina come in and wipe out Louisiana. We like people I was served with had family in New Orleans. We watched the economy collapse on CNN. We watched the Giants win the Super Bowl. We were like, what? Um, but long story short, no, I didn't have that sense of urgency about like fulfillment and giving back and educating for probably the first half decade I was in business. I think I was really just battling myself and like trying to harness who I was and accept what I had done in war and be okay with it. That's where a lot of veterans really struggle is, we go to war, we do things that the Bible says is a sin fundamentally. And I'm
Right.
not like a practicing Christian. I was raised Roman Catholic, but you do things that are hard to forgive, and I saw a demon in the mirror fundamentally, and I had to start loving that what I looked in the mirror, and that was probably the battle that I fought getting out of the military. But eventually, after I started picking up steam and going back to school and making money and doing well and employing people, I probably around like year 6 or 7 of business. Once I started employing people, I was like, holy shit, a lot kind of falls on my plate here. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
responsible. And then the employment, as you know, I know you've had large operations. It got up to 60 people owning gyms. And I was like, holy fucking shit. Like if I don't perform, these people don't eat. And
Yeah.
the way that I train, right? And it's not me paying the people, it's me being the head of the business, the customers coming in, taking care of my team. And the way that I trained my people is, especially at the front desk of a gym, is I would have all my front desk people put pictures of their family at the front desk and next to the cash register. So I would teach them to be good and take care of people because their family depends upon it. But the point that I'm getting at is I really didn't have that sense of urgency until, honestly, until probably like the end of my first decade in business. And that's probably right around the time that I started really harnessing like meditation and a spiritual approach to healing myself. And I was able to find purpose and a sense of urgency. And now I'm just a fucking madman at year 14. I'm just like, I've harnessed this one quote: every minute that passes, you're 1 minute closer to death. And like it just rings
So
true
good.
with me. Yeah, it's so good, right? It's like the sense of urgency. It's like, I don't know about you. I get out of bed at 4 o'clock every morning, 7 days a week, and just go because I'm at the point where there's fulfillment, and I'm at the point where there's impact, and I'm at the point where people's lives are changing that I've come into contact with for years. But that fulfillment really kind of comes full circle and keeps that purposeful sense of urgency going 7 days a week now into my 14th year.
Man, you hit on such a good point. Well, quite a few good points. But the one I want to go back to is actually the employing a lot of people. But even
Yeah.
if you only employ one person,
Yeah.
that cognizance that their lives, their livelihood depends on you performing. And I can
Yep.
go back to last year when I was told my business was no longer my business and I was being kicked to the curb. My thought wasn't about me. It was about my people. I
Yep.
was like, I'm not there to protect them. I was thinking about all the emotions they were going through and the uncertainties they were going through at that moment. And then, probably a little bit after processing, I was like, okay, now I got to go home and tell my wife what's going on. But it was all about my people in that moment. And that's what I think people that haven't been business owners and employed people before, they don't have that recognition of that responsibility. And I think there's probably some business owners that you and I know that still haven't learned that responsibility and really need to if they want to truly take their business to the next level.
Yep. I unfortunately know that feeling too well. In 2020, I decided to sell and close my gym, and I took a monstrous wash on it. I lost six, maybe as it continues to add $7 million on that deal. I
Wow.
lost that much money, but that's not that's not what really hurt. What really hurt me was having to let go of my entire team. I lost probably 10 pounds that week from puking and, for lack of better terms, coming out the other end for a week straight, having that conversation with dozens of people. And it's not, there comes a point where it's not about money. Yeah, money's coming in. Great. That's what you're doing. You're in business. But it's the people, it's the team, it's the investment into building them, it's the investment into building the culture, it's the investment into understanding that you're their leader, and then you, in your case, getting dethroned for, I heard this story, dude, I was like gut sick when I heard that story, but I could relate, and I know that feeling, and I understand, man. It's 100% about them, and I get it.
Well, I want to take a little bit back, is go to the warrior mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously you being in the military, but did the warrior mindset for you start in childhood? Tell us a little bit about growing up. Obviously, you're led to the military and then being an entrepreneur. Was
Yep.
growing up something you always wanted to be an entrepreneur? Was that in your family, in your blood somehow? Tell us a little bit about growing up and then moving past military to the man you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent question. And that's good foreshadowing and foresight, right? No, I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Yeah, was I a Boy Scout and sold, like, the catalogs? Was I a kid and did the lemonade stands? We didn't have snow blowers in the late 80s and the early 90s. I was shoveling fucking snow for people. You know what I mean? I didn't care. 10 years old, shoveling snow.
In the
You want your
Northeast,
grass
right?
cut? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in Connecticut, right? Like, I'm gonna spend all my time in Vermont. I mean, 2 feet of snowfall. And long story short, I just hustled because, cut grass. I did gardening. I would watch people's houses, anything, because I was born pretty wealthy. However, my father, who was responsible for all of that, in his early 40s got cancer, and he was basically a high level salesman for companies, and the lymphoma crippled him to where he couldn't work, and what happened was I watched my mother um, have to go back to work 9 to 5, and
Mm.
then immediately start doing 6 to 12 as well. So she was out of the house from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. 5 days a week, and then that wasn't enough. So on the weekends, she got a job cleaning houses during the day, and then at night she hosted a restaurant. So she worked 7 days a week for years just to keep our quality of life above poor. I mean, we were going to the church, picking up food. I got free lunch in high school. Like, I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just knew that if I wanted something like a new Nintendo game, or, like back then, like rollerblades or something ridiculous, I had to go make money. And
Yeah.
I didn't, you know what I mean, like, I didn't have the opportunity to be given gifts on a regular basis. Granted, my grandparents did help a lot. However, I learned from an early age that I had to kill what I eat. And long story short, I was really fucking angry at that point in my life. And I was very troubled emotionally. I had no emotional intelligence, no EQ, and I would just fight people. I did football, lacrosse, and wrestling. So on the field, it was pretty much okay to beat the hell out of everybody. I did get ejected from a couple of games in lacrosse because I didn't know, but there's an illegal check, which is face mask to face mask. I was just a goon. I would just run around and destroy people on the field. And I mean, I would get into fist fights on the field and everything, but I also would fight people off the field. And that's where I got in trouble, getting arrested as a kid and like constantly beating people up. And come to find out, recently, a guidance counselor that I had in high school reached out to me a couple years ago, maybe last year. One of the teachers that failed me in high school, and I didn't know that this had happened. He failed me my senior year in history, which gave me a 59.5 my senior year, which I did not know. They still graduated me. And I found out that this guy was dying of pancreatic cancer. And my guidance counselor has been following me for the past decade and asked me to record a video for him and tell him how much he did for me by holding my angry ass accountable and failing me. And I did that video for him, and he died very soon after. And then I had a conversation with her, and she's like, Chris, you failed high school. We graduated you because you were going in the military. I
Wow.
was like, oh, oh, this is 20 years later. This is nice to know. And, and then I decided to not go into the military. And then I failed college with a cumulative GPA of 0.73. And then I got into the military, but I didn't just go into the military. I was like, I want to shoot people. And the recruiter was like, you need to go in the infantry. We're at war with Iraq and Afghanistan. I was like, okay, sign me up. So I was like the perfect specimen of anger. And then they just created more of a weapon. And immediately within 6 months, I was in Iraq in my first tour. And 6 months from then, I received my Purple Heart. And there's numerous stories I can go down. But the point is, life started shifting after my life was pretty much taken away on June 18th, 2006. And that was just the time where I was like, okay, I'm actually going to die this time. It's the introduction to my book. It's my first podcast from 2018. It's out there. It's on my Facebook. It's been shared thousands of times. And I don't think I'm anything special. I'm just saying I tell the story on several different platforms to be able to educate, and I'm happy to tell it to anyone who's interested. But the point that I'm getting at is combat straightened me out because I knew I wasn't invincible.
It wasn't a fist fight. It was a gunfight. That's a different level.
It was fucking blow your ass up with a bomb in the road. When you're crawling out on fire and blown apart, come at you with body armor on, high on methamphetamines, and come at you with rockets and AK-47s to saw your head off on video so they can put it on Al Jazeera. Yeah, it was either I'm going to die or you're going to die. And when you have that God complex that I decide who lives and dies, you're an aggressive weapon, and you're well trained, it could do a lot to your ego and super ego. But when I got out, I hated it, and I was still even more aggressive and well trained, and I was doing MMA and winning jiu-jitsu matches and yada yada. And I was like, man, I don't like this. I don't like who I am. I can't fucking stand this. I need to change something. And fundamentally, I had PTSD and traumatic brain injury, and all of my research about 10 years ago concluded that if you start meditating, you can rewire the synapses within your mind, and you can unblock the blocks of trauma. And 10 years later, here we are. That 15 years later, but 10 years of meditating, here we are. And now I am able to I'm not completely healed, but I'm 98.5% healed, and I'm able to help other veterans and people that have been through trauma. Women that have been raped come to me, women that have had daddy issues come to me. People don't realize it. They have a lot of trauma, they just don't want to recognize it. And once you recognize it and you're like, shit, I have work to do, and that inner work all of a sudden starts. That's what I teach when it comes to mindset and, I guess, leadership for ourselves, right? But to answer your question, nah, man, I was a complete fuck up growing up, and I wouldn't say that I'm not now. I just have learned a whole bunch of stuff, and I've forgiven myself, and I've forgiven people in my life. The power of forgiveness will change your life.
Yeah.
Change anybody's life that's willing to forgive themselves and other people.
Well, there's so much to hit on here. Let's park meditation quick, because I want to come back to that. But I want to tell you a story about me, and hopefully this helps people in the audience that are either listening that are a teacher or a student that's not very good at being a student. So you're sitting or listening to two guys that happen to be millionaires, that have worked their ass off to be millionaires. College flunkouts, dropouts, almost failed out of high school. I'll tell you my story in a second. My senior year last semester, I had one of my best friends and my first cousin die in car accidents. I was within 2 weeks of each other. I was emotionally not there. I failed an English class. So one teacher, the only one, saw I was a mess. And one day, I'll never forget it. She came out to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Are you okay?" And I get emotional now telling that. Anytime I tell the story, I get emotional because it was just one. I had to get up out of my desk and leave the room because I wasn't okay. And I didn't want anyone else to see that I wasn't okay. But she passed me, much like your story. I shouldn't have passed. I don't know that I was going to fail I was just certainly going to fail that class, which was a senior class that I needed. And so I just think about that as one teacher was all it took to A, recognize that I wasn't okay, and B, put me on my way to get through high school to go on to the next level, wherever that might be. And that happened for you as well. So for anyone listening out there that you're not a good student right now, the public education system is failing you as a student, which is failing many, know that that isn't the end. Like, you can go on to college, you can go on to the military, you can go on and be an entrepreneur, do whatever you want to do through self-education, get proper mentorship, get proper coaches in your life, whether that's Chris or I or someone entirely different. Awesome.
Anyone.
Just hang on to that. So let's move on to that meditation piece, because I know that's a really big part of your life. It's becoming more popularized. I actually had Chad McGeehee on my former podcast, who is the only Division I full-time employed director of meditation. He's at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he was brilliant. So he works with all the athletic programs. He has his own coaching consulting business as well. So it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. But what does meditation mean to you, and how has that helped heal, whether it's PTSD, some of your mental trauma, physical and emotional trauma? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure, man. And first things first, my condolences to your friend and your cousin, and thank God for that teacher, right?
Yeah.
Angels, whatever you believe in, signs, nudges from a higher power, God, whatever your belief system is, it's real. It's real, and they're put into your life at perfect times, and taken from your life at perfect times, depending on how you look at things. But yeah, meditation. So having to give you some foreshadowing, having a Purple Heart, right? Like, everybody that's killed in combat receives a Purple Heart. There's not many that are still living. That's the thing, right? So when you go to combat as a infantryman or slang, which is called a grunt, and there's levels above me, but when you go to the VA with a combat job, right? Like, your job is combat, not cook the food and do some combat, not like fill up the oil truck and do some combat. Like, your job is to combat, right? When you go to the VA, you're a Ranger, you're an SF guy, you're a SEAL, you're a Delta guy, you're this, you're a recon guy, you're that, and you have a combat job and you have a Purple Heart, they know that you have PTSD. So I literally said, oh, actually, I have my DD-214 right here. DD-214, I have to go to the base to do something Thursday. DD-214 is your release paperwork from the military. It's like a college degree. It's like, you've been trained, okay? And that's what your college degree is. It's nothing more than that. It doesn't matter if you're an MD, you're an MBA, you're a JD, whatever it is, right? You've been trained at this. Me, I'm a master of business, whatever. But the military says, you've been trained in these schools, you've done combat and this, well, it says Purple Heart, it says combat infantry, it says tutor. So the lady that was assessing me for my free healthcare looks at it and she says, oh, infantry, Purple Heart, you have PTSD. Oh, you have how many documented explosions? 13. You have traumatic brain injury. Here, you're going to take this medication, and this medication.
Really?
Oh, I was like, I don't know if you ever been inside a VA. I was like, oh, the hell, I'm going to take that. Nope. 15 years ago, Vietnam veterans were, walking around the VA numb, drooling on themselves. Korea War veterans were dilapidated. you know. And World War II veterans, you see like a couple badasses, like they're like 85, you know, like walking around, like they won't. World War II veteran, like you can't put them in a wheelchair. Like doesn't matter what happened to them, you know. They're the great generation, you know. They just
The
won't do it.
greatest.
They're like, you know what I mean? They've been through literally the worst of everything. But I was like, hell no, you're not putting me on that. Mm-mm. And they're like, yeah, you have no choice. And I was like, yeah, good luck trying to make me. And so I walked out of there. Actually, I took the paper out of her hand. I was like, okay, what's my name? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what's my name? She's like, well, I don't recall. I'm like, so you want to give me all these drugs because you looked at my DD-214, but you don't know my name? Yeah, nah, we're not doing that. This is what we're going to do. This meeting's over. So I was like, man, you know, I got this PTSD. Like, what am I going to do about it? So I started doing self-research, and everything pointed towards meditation. And I was like, man, meditation's for yoga people. Like, I don't know what this means. I don't understand. This is some soft bullshit. Like, I don't get it. And I just started reading books and watching YouTube and studying people like Napoleon Hill and Florence Shin and Dr. Dispenza and like industry leaders, whether they're alive or not. Bob Proctor, I'm a big student of Bob Proctor. Dude's a beast, you know, recently passed away. Uh, and I started doing it. And it was really, really hard for me to calm my mind because it was going so fast. But I just made myself do it. There was two habits that I made myself do about 10 years ago. And I had every excuse in the book to not do it. I'm too busy. I have a company. I'm double majoring. I'm personal training during the day. I'm building my company at night. I'm double majoring. I'm bartending and bouncing on the weekends. I had every excuse. I don't have time. I don't have time. But what I did was I would wake up around 6 o'clock in the morning then, and the first about half hour to 45 minutes of my day, I made myself read and I made myself meditate. Whether I actually fell into meditation or not was probably a good question mark for the first couple years because my mind was racing about war and you know I can't see, my eyes are shut, like I'm scared, is someone going to try and kill me? And those are the thoughts that go through your head. But as time went on and I started reading more about meditation and I started making myself do it, I started understanding the power of having a guiding light, if you will. And you could call it God, you could call it Buddha, you could call it Jesus Christ, you could call it yourself, you could call it your father, you call it anybody, the universe. And what I started doing was I started asking for signs of what I should be doing. And this is going to sound crazy, but I think some people will understand if they're really well connected spiritually. Is my father started coming to me and he started talking to me. And my dad died while I was in Iraq. My dad died a month before I received my Purple Heart.
Mm.
And I got flown out of Iraq. And I was home within 48 hours. Like I'd never seen the military move that fast. And boom, they just ripped me out of combat, sent me home, buried my father, straight back into combat, got wounded. And it's literally how it happened. And my dad like would come to me in meditations and I would see him and like just recently this week, you know, 10 years later, he came to me because I was asking questions. And you know, I'm like, hey man, like what do I need to do? And he's like, you need to calm the fuck down and you need to forgive yourself. And my dad, you know, my dad was in the military as well. And I really looked up to him. You know, he was my coach growing up, and I was nasty at sports. You couldn't fuck with me. Like no one on the field could outgoon me. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody had their skill sets. I was the guy who destroyed you physically.
So Andy
Not
Frisella's like, Dad, kill, kill, kill. You really resonate with that.
my, yeah. My dad would be like, you need to break their helmets, break their arms, never let them forget who you played. And I'm like, let me in, let's go. You know, so but then you take that and put it in the military and it's like, oh, you're gonna try and come kill me? Good luck. You know, so I don't want to go too crazy because we're talking about meditation, but But yeah, I resonated with that really well with when Andy would talk about those sorts of things. By the way, that guy's cool. I got to meet him in May, which was awesome. He introduced himself to me. I was like, "Yeah, dude, I know who you are. I'm Chris." You know. But long story short, yeah. So I started evolving. I started like calming down. Like I stopped having to sit with my back to the wall. I stopped like questioning every person that looked like they were from a lower socioeconomic status if I was going to lose my life or not. I stopped being concerned of people trying to kill me, and then I started realizing that mistakes are good things. And that's really where things started changing in business, because like personally, emotionally, through meditation, all of these mistakes that I made, I started to realize were just lessons. And when I started applying that approach to my spirituality and my meditation and my business, is really when things like picked up financially, but also I started loving myself. So that meditation helped with my healing process. And I think I'm answering the question. Reel me back in if I'm not, but it's probably one of the best things I ever learned how to do coming from combat.
Yeah, no, you absolutely are answering the question. I think where I want to go with that is you're having these thoughts and these visions of your dad. And many people that are novices, I guess, with meditation,
Yeah.
they think it's just going to a spot where your head's clear. And virtually, especially us ADHD people like myself,
Yeah.
that
Same.
is really hard to even envision being able to sit and clear your mind.
Yeah.
And so as you're having these thoughts, which I know that's not meditation, it's actually understanding and organizing the thoughts you're having and seeing that from a higher level. And I've gotten a little bit into it. I'm still a novice as well. But how do you decipher what thoughts are real and how, not that they're not all real, I guess. How do I want to ask this is,
Ego to
how do you,
higher power.
yeah. How do you continue to evolve those and be like, these are the ones I'm going to focus more on. These are the ones that I'm going to change my life with, et cetera. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, and there's so many different forms of meditation, right? There's guided meditation, there's visualization, there's historic meditation. There's actually a really
Transcendental.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many, thank you. There's so many good books, but I'm blanking on the name. There's a really good book that I read recently that really breaks down I'm looking at my bookcase. I'm looking at like my library, how to break down meditation. I guess well I you know what, I'll email it to you if you want to
We'll put it in
if you
show
want to
notes if you email
yeah,
it.
I should know these things, but you know it's such a complicated answer because the short answer is it just takes time you can hear the difference between source, higher power, and ego. What I've learned is you have several levels of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
You have subconscious, you have conscious, and you have superconscious. All right, your subconscious is okay. Um, Someone's going to kill you today, Chris. It's your programming. I was programmed to think that way because people tried to fucking kill me for 2 years straight. You can rework your subconscious. There's many different approaches: meditation, affirmation, gratitude journaling. But there's subconscious, which is your programming. There's your conscious, which is what we're in right now, talking about this. This is our conscious, right? And then there's a superconscious, which is your source, God, universe, higher self, dad, your higher power that's speaking to you. When time passes, you can clearly hear, see, and feel the difference. When you get this, just like when you opened me up and gave my bio, when you could feel the skin tightening, when you can feel it in your soul, in your skin,
Your ethos.
and you
Yeah.
can hear it and you can see it, it's not your ego. It's your superconscious. You're being delivered a message from whatever your belief system is. And it took me years to understand this. I mean, years. Now it's crazy. I carry a notebook with me and write down everything because it comes to me. They're called nudges. They just come to me, right? Think about it. Like a thought just pops into your mind. Where'd that come from? Where'd it come down? Well, here's the thing. When you're super connected spiritually, those nudges, those thoughts are coming from whatever your belief system it is. And that's how I operate my business. That's how I run my team. That's how I run my life. It happened today while I was doing cardio. I did like 20 minutes on the Stairmaster. I was being a pussy. I was like, oh, I got 5 more minutes. Like, I need to get off this thing and go walk for 5 minutes on the treadmill. But I wasn't being a pussy. I needed to be on the treadmill so I can email myself because I didn't have my notebook. And I got 2 nudges from what to plan my mastermind on through next year, right there while walking on the treadmill. And I emailed myself, bang. And then something else came and I emailed myself, bang. And that is your super conscious. That is you being delivered a message or an idea or a thought. And to answer your question, it just takes time to understand the difference. But what I can tell you is if you're in the conscious and you're not spiritually connected right now, it's likely ego or super ego. It's likely your programming from your subconscious. And I don't mean you, I just mean anyone. And there's like Dr. Joe Dispenza, I think he's like the dude when it comes to living right now that teaches these topics. But I know Tony Robbins talks about it too, and then Bob Proctor has like a Padawan, Alex. I forget his last name. He's all over Instagram. He teaches this stuff too. But what it comes down to is you just have to trust yourself that when you are being delivered something, that it's a nudge, it's a higher source, it's
A download.
thought. It's a download. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard it called a download from shamans and spiritual people is like, hey, after you go through this experience, after you go through a transcendental meditation, some of it won't happen right there. Some of it will. But throughout the day, whether it's cardio, whether it's a warm or cold shower, you may receive these downloads that are actually that super conscious speaking to you, like you mentioned.
Yep.
So that's really good.
That's the word that I failed to say, and that's exactly what it is. And in my first book, I write about a download that gave me my entire business plan for the next decade right as I was closing my gym. I remember exactly where it was. I wrote about it in my book. And those downloads could be hours, they could be thoughts that pop into your mind. And no matter what, if you put that vibration out, if you have that emotion that you want something and you get to the vibrational level where you're sending it out, it will come back because the universe is always conspiring to give you what you ask for. That's why you got to be careful of negative thoughts. It might not come immediately, but it will come down the road. Just like you said, downloads can happen whenever.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's switch gears here. It's clear you have a passion for growing others personally and professionally. What is the number one reason people stand in their own way for continued growth?
Fear.
In your opinion? Fear.
Fear of whatever is in the way of that person. Fear. In my opinion, I think fear is the biggest stranglehold to success, to money, to growth, to relationships. More than anything else, we're adults, right? So if you're over the age of 18 listening to this, you are now responsible for where you are in life and where you're going and the thoughts that enter your head. So if you think negatively about something, understand it's natural. The key is to understand how to reframe it into a positive thought. I did it today while working out on my first set after cardio. I had a negative thought. I was like, man, we're doing so well. We're making all this money, blah, 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 blah. What happens if it gets shut off? And I was like, fuck that. Why would I think like that? I just give up and trust that everything is going to be awesome. I give up and trust, and I just belted it out, an affirmation. I give up and trust. 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 Here I am, a teacher of this. Yeah, of course I'm going to have negative thoughts. It's natural. But when you learn to harness those thoughts and reframe them, in this case, fear holding someone back. Well, I don't know if I want to get married. What if they cheat on me? Yeah, I can't get married because they might cheat on me. Well, you're going to let that control you? You're going to let fear control you?
And you're
Or
manifesting that thought.
You're literally manifesting. Exactly. I deal with a lot of people that are scared to put their wins, like my students. I just bought a $250,000 Porsche. I don't want to put it on Facebook. Why the fuck not? Porsches are awesome. Put it up. Be happy for yourself. Well, so and so. Who? Okay, so you fear what so and so is going to say. All right, well, let's unpack this. Tell me about so and so. What are they doing? Oh, so and so lives in their mom's basement and collects unemployment. Okay, so Sally, let's call Sally. You care about what Sally's going to say about your 911 Turbo S that you just bought, and she lives on the government in her mom's basement, and you care what the fuck she's going to put on your Facebook, and when you're proud of your accomplishment, fear of judgment in that
Mm-hmm.
case, or fear of the unknown. I don't know if I should start this business, Chris. What happens if Amazon takes it? You're going to fear the unknown and not actually give it a shot. I would say fear, to answer your question. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. One thing that came to mind is in my previous role of recruiting and training and developing financial advisors, we did recruit some former Marines, former Army veterans, military veterans as a whole. One thing that it took me a long time to understand, and I want to get your perspective on it versus just giving mine. When I first didn't understand them, I was sitting there going, wait, you were not scared to act to run into danger, but you're scared to pick up the phone and call that prospect?
Yep.
That I want to hear your perspective on that and maybe
Yeah.
speak directly to your brothers and sisters that served,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
couldn't understand that for the longest time. I was like, wait, you were
Yep.
in live action fire. You were a Marine throwing bullets downrange, getting bullets thrown at you, and you
Yep.
can't pick up that phone? Help me understand.
That's
What
an
would you say
excellent.
there?
That's an excellent duality right there, and that's a great question. Yeah, and I know you know the answer to it, right? But what it comes down to is this: like, I carried a 25-pound machine gun my first tour. It's cyclic rate, meaning it's a M249 saw. So if I held the trigger down for a minute straight, it would shoot approximately 1,200 rounds. Right. So this was a
It's
weapon
a
of death.
badass gun.
Yeah, it's a bad motherfucker. It makes my EDC look like a pellet gun, you know. But anyway, I don't shoot anybody anymore. But and that's the truth, man. I don't shoot anybody anymore, right? My job used to be that, amongst other things. So my ability to speak on this is powerful. And this is what it comes down to, man. When you first get to war, you're scared. And I've seen guys piss themselves, suck their thumb, shit themselves. I mean, I've seen it. But what ends up happening, because it's scary, man, people are coming to kill you. Like, but it goes deeper than that. You have this sense of purpose, even though we didn't know what purpose was at 20 years old. You're not out there for you. You're out there for the country. But you know what you're really out there in combat for? You're out there in combat for your brothers. In my case, I was in prior to Obama, so only men could be in combat roles. Like now, women could do it, which I've seen dead women, dead United States American soldiers. It's not something you want to see in combat. And I knew her, but yeah, like you give up the fear because it's more important that you. I'm getting that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
My
Well, I
skin's
saw the
tightening.
emotion on your face when you mentioned
Right.
her.
Jessica, yeah. Man, dude. You give up that fear because it's not just about you. It's about if you don't perform, everybody else dies too.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're stationed in the South, like I was in Tennessee, you go home with everybody. I went home to Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. They're like, "Where the fuck are you from? Connecticut? Like, what is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's New York." And they're like, "Oh, New York. Oh, we can't go there, but I live in Alabama. You want to come home for the weekend and meet the family?" Yeah. So like I'm like, "What's white sauce? I don't understand this. We have pizza. We have pizza. That's it. Just pizza." You know? And they're like, "No, you don't." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, this is where it's from. The Italian American pizza is from Connecticut." Anyways, the point that I'm getting at is you you don't fear anymore because it's bigger than you. It's purposeful. It's you accept death. You accept the fear and realize that more death will come if you don't perform and everybody else doesn't get to go home too. So it's like a combined mastermind to stay alive, and the fear just goes. Listen, man, the first time someone gets into a machine gun fight and throws some mortars and rockets at you, it is some scary shit. The first time I went outside a major military base in Baghdad, Iraq, the first fucking time I got into a fight. And when you say fight, it's machine guns, rockets, IEDs, mortars. I mean, people trying to kill you. Scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh, what in the hell is going on? I got to, okay, I'm shooting the 50 cal. All right, hopefully I make it out of here. But after you go through it a few times, you're just like, all right, okay, cool. Like, good luck trying to kill me. So you move the fear, right? You just push the fear aside because why you're there is more important than just you. You're just a small piece. You're just a pawn.
So the purpose is
And when
greater than the fear.
yes, and when it relates to business, you take those battle-hardened Marines and listen. I served with Marine grunts. They are beasts. Like it's like looking in a mirror. You know, I was in the Army. Like we make fun of each other. Like Marines eat crayons and lick windows. But the point is, mad respect to every Marine listening. The point is, yeah, you take a man out of combat, right? You could take the man out of war, but you can't take the war out of man. And all of a sudden, a new fear comes in. Well, what if I get rejected? Well, what if I can't meet my numbers? Well, what if I let down my team? Because that's what they're thinking. What if I let my team down? This is my new team. What if I let them down? And then if they have PTSD, it's cycled in. And they're going to get emotional about it because they can't perform and they think they're going to die or someone's going to die or someone's going to lose their leg. It gets that deep whether they talk about it or not. And that's one of the things that I'm here for, is to be able to educate on these things, because most people, I'm talking 99% of veterans that have seen combat, will not talk about combat unless the person they're talking to has been in it. I'm shunned from time to time. They're like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, everybody needs to understand.
You've been there.
I'm happy. I'm happy to do it, to educate. I didn't mean to turn that around to me.
No, actually, it's really good. And I think you're going to help a lot of people with that because, as you talked about, earlier on in the episode, is, you witnessed Vietnam veterans all drugged up because they didn't have outlets to talk to. And not only that, they had Americans throwing and spitting and shunning them. And then you have the World War II veterans that are just hardened. And, so our veterans need the help regardless. Our system's screwed up, and those that served need people like you and need outlets to talk to, whether it's equine therapy, the Lone Survivor Foundation, many of these veterans foundations that are helping give them an outlet to talk to, an outlet to get better mentally and physically in some cases. So speaking of that, you have overcome some amazing obstacles that have helped you become stronger, both mentally and physically, and has helped you, become the strong leader and business owner that you are today. Introduce our listeners to the Clark Initiative and the gifts you are sharing with veterans and whose shoes you've walked in.
Yeah. So, all right. So to understand the Clark Initiative, I got to tell the story. Okay. This is probably going to be 20 minutes. All right. There's no way to tell this story without giving the context of it. Okay. In April of 2006, my father died. I flew home, buried him. In June of 2006, I received my Purple Heart. I was out of combat for, I think, like 3-4 weeks. It's hard to understand the time frames because of the trauma. But the day I received my Purple Heart, I received my Purple Heart with 3 other men. We all lived. And one of those men was Sergeant Carlton Clark from Vermont. And his ear was missing. Like, that was the worst that happened. Like, the helmet cut his ear off like accidentally from the explosion. So I was making fun of him, like I kicked him. I was like, "Put your fucking ear back on," and for real. And then we got into a fight, more of a fight. We just happened to come out of our blackout because we had just got whacked hard in a truck. We went 70 feet off the road in a truck from an IED underneath. I was in the gun turret, but I woke up. I was like, "Oh my god, what's going on? Everybody's alive. All right, my dick's still attached. I'm good." Clark, put your ear back on, you know. And so, anyways, we were out for weeks. We were down. We couldn't operate. We were fucked up. Like our bodies were fucked up. I got addicted to Percocets, right? And they started weaning me off, and I was like, "Give me more," and they're like, "No." Well, about a month later, something along that, 5 weeks later, so it's the time frames are a little hazy. It's right there. Say 4 to 6 weeks. A mission came down the pipeline, and it was going right back to where I got my Purple Heart. And I was like, "No, I'm not going. No." I was like, "You guys promised me I would never have to go back. No." And they looked at me, and they're like, "Hey, Chris, like, we need you. Like, you're the best machine gunner we have. Like, we need you on this one. It's going to be dangerous. We're going to get into fights. We need you. We count on you." I was like, "All right, I'll get in the truck." First patrol back, I was put in for a Bronze Star with Valor, which is 2 steps below the Medal of Honor, and the Silver Star is in between. And I almost got killed again that day. Real close. F-15s dropped in to support us, which you don't hear of in combat. Listening to an F-15 sound break the sound barrier to drop in to support you is never seen anything like it. It stopped the entire fight. Even the opposition stopped, and they were heavily funded and trained Syrians. Anyways, made it out of that one. Second mission back. They're like, "Warrants, we're going back to Route Caveman." I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like, they're like, "Yo, like, people got to go." And I'm like, "Man, can I catch a break?" And I had just put the 50 cal on the truck. If you've never seen an M2 50 caliber machine gun, it weighs about 100 pounds, and it's in 2 pieces. There's the body, which weighs about 80 pounds. You put it on one shoulder, and then there's the barrel, which is about 5 feet long and weighs about 20 pounds. And you have to walk it over to the truck, and it's a half hour to get that thing up. You got to put it on the truck. You got to measure the headspace, the timing, make sure the gun's right. You got to screw the barrel down with the headspace back, and you hear it, and it's like click, click, click. And you're like, okay, it's good. Dump some motor oil on it because we're about to rock out. That's how you lubricate a machine gun, motor oil. And my boss comes over, and he goes, "Hey, Warrens, you're bumped." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You're off. The whole truck. You're off. Your team's off tonight. Go call your girlfriend." And I was a private. I was low man on the totem pole. And I didn't get days off, dude. I mean, I had gone half a year without a day off. You know what I mean? In combat. And I was like, "I don't understand." And he's like, "You're not on this patrol. We're bumping you and the 2 others, the driver and the boss. You're off. There's a new team taking it." I was like, "Okay. And Sergeant Carlton Clark comes over, and he's like, "Warrens, is that 50 cal up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, motherfucker, you know it's up. Like, it's good to go." Army doctrine would say for him to check it, but you need to check my work. And that was the last time I ever saw Clark and Sergeant Seal and Corporal Zamora. They hit a monstrous IED that night. The truck turned on top of itself, and Seal and Zamora burnt alive inside of the truck while everyone watched. And Clark was found about 300 feet away, pretty close to death. He was in the gun turret. That was my seat. And my good friend, I still talk to him, Sergeant Taylor. He's still in the Army. My skin's completely welted. Uh, Found Clark alive and put him on the Black Hawk that day. And Clark died on the Black Hawk. And Black Hawk's a military helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, um, I was on the phones talking to my girlfriend. And I remember they came in and they cut the phones off. It's like a payphone trailer of payphones, like just 20 payphones, so you could just call home. KIA, 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 blackout, blackout, blackout. Get back to your command post. And I felt it. I was like, oh no, no. And I didn't know who it was until I got back to the basically the command center. And I found out what had happened. And I wrote about this a little bit on socials over the past decade. It's probably my second most shared story. It's probably a couple thousand shares on this one. And I got to the point in my career last year. Well, I will just back up. I've always been big with tithing, if you're familiar with the term.
Mm-hmm.
It's a spiritual way to
Yep.
donate. Like, as I was moving into my second decade, I would tithe 200 grand a year, like more than salaries of one of my 4 companies at the time. So I've always been big into like donating and giving money and like supporting people. And here I am at 37 years old, and I'm like, yo, I want to get into philanthropy. And I thought to myself, I was like, I should be helping veterans. And I'm going to build a nonprofit. And we're going to, what we're going to do, we're going to focus on veterans getting out of the military. That transition out of the military is the hardest thing,
Yeah.
right? Just like your Marines that couldn't pick up the phone. It's just fucking hard. I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to focus on these motherfuckers getting out, and I'm going to teach them how to A, go to school, B, open a business, or C, all 3, because that's what I did. And they'll believe it coming from me. So it got to the point to where I was building the company with my team, and they're like, Chris, what are we going to name it? I was like, oh, yeah, well, this is what we're going to name it. We're going to name it after Clark, the Clark Initiative, because that was my seat. And, since then, started building this last year. I haven't even publicly announced it yet. I guess I just did. And I got a hold of his parents. And New Year's Day, 2022, I went and visited them. And I told them the story. And I hadn't been that emotional in a long time. I took a picture. I took a selfie of myself. I was all emotional. And that was probably one of the toughest I've had some tough conversations in my career, man. You know how it is being a leader. You got to hold motherfuckers accountable. And that was the toughest conversation I've had in a long time. Arguably my whole life, maybe outside of my dad dying and, stuff like that. So, like, they're on board. I've recruited a board, several veterans on it. Everyone's well-to-do. One guy has 800 employees, like seasoned people. You know what I mean? So we're gonna, we're still building. And we're looking to announce the public announcement of the Clark Initiative Q4 of this year, and moving through Q4 of our business year. It's technically not that in the nonprofit world, but we're going to announce Q4 this year, and then moving through 2023, we're going to put on some events. But fundamentally, the long-term vision is to be a grantor. Granting business owners that are, entrepreneurs that transition out of the military, that have been educated by me and my people and my curriculum, and are at the ability to collect money to build a business. I'm going to put a retreat in Vermont in the Clark's backyard for the most part, like within that area. We're going to do all sorts of things for a lot of things that I think a lot of nonprofits are missing, which is housing the veteran and their family and their service dogs together under one monstrous roof, and have curriculum for the families and have curriculum for the dogs and have curriculum for the veterans. Uh, Primary focus on entrepreneurship, but I'll teach them how to go to school too because it's simple. And I'm not a believer in formal education, but and along the way we're gonna help a whole bunch of veterans understand how to do business for free to them. And my entire board are former veterans who are now successful, and we're going to change definitely some veterans' lives, but fundamentally, I would really like to be able to affect the mindset of veterans, specifically transitioning out. In the long-term approach, in the short term, we're going to start with some events, some in-person events, and start mentoring people. I have no clue what I'm doing, but I had never had a clue building a business, never, right? So okay, fine. Now I have a sick fucking team. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I got my buddy's mom. She's running the nonprofit. So I have directors that are in charge of all my companies, and then I coach the directors, and then they coach everyone below them. She was in nonprofits for 40 years. So like, we're figuring it out one week
Yeah.
at a time.
Well, I have a couple
Yeah.
people to introduce you to as well. And brother, such a worthy cause, such a worthy cause. And like I told you before, I did not serve, but many family members that did, including a cousin that survived an IED blast right before the Humvees became armored,
Oh shit.
and
Yeah,
which are
good for
made
him.
here in Wisconsin,
Yeah, buddy.
by the way. But man, well, with my retreat property, we have a 12,000 square foot horse arena where we can do some equine therapy for veterans. Any way we can help in this initiative, please let me know, because I think it's such a worthy cause.
Thank you. And when I get to the ability to be able to help with the nonprofit, I would love to help with the nonprofit aspect of things. Prior to that, if there's anything I can do to help with your mission outside of the Clark Initiative, bro, you got me on speed dial. I'll help you.
All right, appreciate it, brother. Well, we are at time. I want to be respectful of your time. I know this was a highly impactful episode. Just the stories, the vulnerability that you showed today. I mean, the passion and the purpose that you have in coaching leaders and veterans, just amazing all around. You're appreciated, brother, all of your work. And so for all of you listening, where can they follow you?
Thank you for the compliment. I just see it as it's a new day, right? Like, let's fucking go, baby. I jump out of bed at 4 a.m. like a possessed fucking madman, like straight up. I'm like, let's go. Like, what do we do? Like, where's my schedule? Okay, now I know what I'm doing today, even though I studied it before I went to bed. But the point that I'm getting at is, guys, my whole thing is, I just hope that I helped one person today and offered some perspective. And if I did, and you guys want to follow me, my website's chriswarns.com. It has all of my links. Fundamentally, I'm on Facebook, Christopher Warns, Instagram, Chris Warns _OG. My podcast is the CW Clinic on all major platforms. And then you could find everything else from there, my books, my coaching, all my stuff. But it's not about sales pitches. It's not like that. It's about impact. It's about helping, and it's about giving back. And what I do on my social medias is try to educate as best as I possibly know how, and supporting me along that journey and me supporting you along yours is what I call a harmonious relationship, as Napoleon Hill writes about, and I now do. And harmonious relationships are what I'm about. And I think everybody here listening understands. You gotta help each other. So if you guys want to follow along, I'd be grateful, and I'll help you guys as much as I can. You're more than welcome to reach out.
You got it, my man. You are definitely impacting in a big way. So, everyone listening, please share this episode, especially if you're a veteran. You're going to get a lot of impact out of this, but any leader is going to get impact. So, subscribe, share, follow Chris Warnes. And everybody, until next time, remember the good and great are the enemies of possible. Have a great week.